So you walked out of that interview and something just felt off. You can't quite put your finger on it, but your gut is whispering that something about this place isn't right. Here's the thing most people get wrong. They ignore that feeling because they want the job so badly that they talk themselves out of the warning signs sitting right in front of them. And that single decision, taking a job you should have walked away from, can quietly cost you years of your career. My name is Dre, and I've spent a long time watching how companies actually hire from the inside. Not the polished version they put on their careers page, but the real machinery underneath. And I'm going to be straight with you, the way most people in this space won't. A great employee should be picky. You should be selective about who you give your time and your talent to, because one bad employer can set you back further than a year of being unemployed ever could. So today I'm walking you through 5 major red flags that should show up in a job interview, the kind that should make you seriously reconsider whether you want to sign anything at all. Quick note before we dig in. I'm not a lawyer, and nothing in this video is legal advice. Employment law varies a lot from state to state, so if you think something genuinely crossed the line, talk to an employment attorney in your area. What I'm giving you here is the pattern recognition, the stuff I've seen play out over and over from the recruiting side of the table. And here's the mindset shift I want you to hold on to for the entire video. You are not a beggar in that room. The best candidates I ever sat across from didn't act like they were lucky to be there. They made me feel like I was the one being evaluated, like I had to earn them. When you carry yourself that way, these red flags stop being things you nervously overlook and start being deal breakers you calmly walk away from. You should be interviewing the employer at least as hard as they're interviewing you. So let's get into it. Red flag number 1 is when they ask you questions they're legally not allowed to ask. There's a whole category of questions that simply don't belong in a professional interview. Anything that digs into protected characteristics like your race, your gender, your religion, your age, whether you have a disability, your national origin, any of that. But what does this actually look like when you're sitting in the room? It's rarely as obvious as you'd expect. It usually comes dressed up as friendly small talk. Picture an interviewer leaning back and casually asking whether you're planning to start a family soon. That question is a problem, and here's why. Whether or not you have kids has absolutely nothing to do with whether you can do the job. What they're really fishing for is whether they might be on the hook for parental leave, or whether they're quietly assuming you'll be less committed once you have a family at home. It's an assumption dressed up as conversation. The same goes for religion. If an interviewer guesses at your background and starts probing whether you'll need breaks during the day for prayer or which holidays you observe, that's not appropriate either. Those questions have to stay tied to whether you can actually perform the role. And then there's the compensation history question, where they ask what you were paid at your last job. In a growing number of states, that question is now flat out illegal to ask, and the logic behind those laws is solid. You should be paid for the value you bring to this role, not chained forever to whatever number a previous employer decided you were worth. If you got underpaid once, you shouldn't have to drag that around for the rest of your working life. Now, I'll be fair here. A lot of hiring managers have shockingly little interview training, and some of them genuinely don't know any better. But not knowing the rules doesn't make it okay, and it definitely doesn't make it a place you want to work. Your move when this happens is simple. You don't have to lecture them or make a scene. You can deflect gracefully, redirect to your qualifications, and quietly file it away as the data point it is. Red flag number 2 is when the job in the room doesn't match the job in the posting. You found a listing that sounded like it was written for you. The responsibilities lined up, the title was right, you got excited. Then you sit down with the hiring manager, and slowly the role starts shape-shifting into something you didn't apply for. Maybe the day-to-day they're describing has almost nothing to do with the title. Or maybe they hit you with the classic line, just do this other thing for 6 to 9 months, and then we'll move you into the role you actually wanted. I need you to hear me on this. That promised transition almost never happens. Lower quality employers use the bait and switch on purpose because they know the real version of the job is a tough sell. So they advertise the attractive version to get bodies in the door. When you can fill a gap between what's on the page and what's coming out of the hiring manager's mouth, that gap doesn't shrink after you're hired. It grows. Bad employers are experts at burying the unpleasant parts of a role or sugarcoating them just enough to get a yes. The fix here is to get specific before you ever accept. Ask them to walk you through what your actual first 90 days look like, hour by hour, project by project. If the answer wanders or contradicts the listing, you have your answer. Red flag number 3 is when the expectations are wildly out of line with the pay. This one is everywhere. The job description demands a level of experience and ownership that's enormous, and then the number they're willing to attach to it is small. It usually comes bundled with expectations that aren't even physically achievable inside a normal work week, which means your personal life is the thing that gets sacrificed to make the math work. Imagine they want someone to run a department twice the size of anything you've managed before, with more responsibility layered on top, and then at the offer stage, the salary lands tens of thousands of dollars below what that role is genuinely worth in the market. Low-quality employers are low quality precisely because they refuse to pay a fair wage while expecting the world in return. And watch out for the dangling carrot, the exotic incentive trip, the company car you can supposedly earn, the giant bonus tied to milestones that only a tiny fraction of people ever actually hit. They know the odds, and so should you. What tends to ride along with that underpayment is a culture of micromanagement, broken communication, and a constant low-grade hum of stress. Before you accept anything, do your homework on market rate for that title in your region, and walk into the compensation conversation knowing the number you'll say no below. Let me pause here for a second, because I want this to land. I once watched a candidate turn down what looked like a dream offer on paper. Great title, recognizable company. But during the process, she noticed 3 of these flags stacking up at once, and instead of rationalizing them away the way most of us do, she trusted the pattern and walked. 6 months later, that division got gutted in layoffs. The point isn't that she got lucky. The point is that these signals are information, and the people who take their careers seriously learn to read them instead of explaining them away. Red flag number 4 is a company that quietly churns through its people. A poor employer has a hard time holding on to good talent, and that turnover leaves fingerprints if you know where to look. The simplest move is to just ask, in the interview, why this position is open. Listen closely to the answer. If they can't give you a clean, believable reason, or if they admit the last person was pushed out or left on their own, dig deeper into why. Then go cross-reference. Glassdoor and similar sites are useful, but read them with a clear head, because people are far more likely to leave a review when they're angry than when they're content. So you're not looking for one furious post. You're hunting for a repeating theme. If review after review mentions the same thing, constant micromanagement, bonuses that mysteriously never get paid, A revolving door of managers. That consistency is telling you about the culture, not about one disgruntled person. And if a company has a reputation for cutting people loose at a moment's notice, factor that in too. Job security is part of your compensation, even though it never shows up on the offer letter. Read between the lines. Look for the pattern, and ask the pointed questions in the room that force an honest answer. Red flag number 5 is a company that doesn't look like it can actually afford you. Take a look at how long the business has been around and how solid its foundation seems. Now, a short track record isn't automatically a problem. A real startup with the genuine products and proper backing can be a fantastic place to grow. The issue is the company that's clearly running on fumes. If a founder tells you straight out that they simply can't pay you what the role is worth right now because money is tight, believe them. And understand that the tightness won't stop at your salary. It'll show up in your tools, your support, your stability, everything. So do a little digging. What does their web presence actually look like? Is the site full of vague buzzwords and generic stock photos? Or is there real substance, real press, a real physical address? If they're local, there's nothing wrong with quietly driving past the office to confirm there are actually people in there doing work. And here's a hard line for me. If they expect you to supply your own equipment to do the job, that's a serious warning. A company with its act together pays for your training, your tools, your software, and the cost of doing the work they hired you to do. When they're pushing those costs onto you before you've even started, that tells you exactly how they'll treat you once you're inside. So let's pull this together, because the through line matters more than any single item. When you're job hunting, it's dangerously easy to slip into desperation mode and grab the first thing that comes along, especially if the search is dragged on and the bills are real. I understand that pressure. But some roles are worse than no role, and learning to recognize them is one of the most valuable career skills you'll ever build. You watch for the illegal questions that reveal how a company really thinks. You watch for the job that quietly mutates between the posting and the room. You watch for the gap between what they demand and what they're willing to pay. You watch for the churn that shows up in turnover and reviews. And you watch for the company that simply can't afford the talent it's trying to hire. Stack those filters together, and you put yourself in the driver's seat, where you're choosing your next employer with strategy instead of just accepting whatever lands in front of you. Do that consistently, and you reach a point where you never have to settle for a bad job again. If this gave you a sharper eye for your next interview, do me a favor and hit that like button, because it genuinely helps other people who are out there job hunting find this. And while you're at it, subscribe, because I'm putting out new breakdowns every week on how to navigate your career on your terms instead of theirs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.